So last week I talked about the ways of eating to avoid the sort of dreaded weight gain over the Christmas season. And so tonight I thought I'd touch on the other side of that, which is about alcohol intake. And many of us, we have really good intentions, we eat really healthily, but you get to a point in the year in particular where there's possibly lots of activities of going out. There certainly has been for me in the past week or so. And this can really start to catch up with you. And again, you can get to January and you sort of regret maybe the amount of alcohol you've been drinking and the impact it can have on your health. So I thought I would first of all explain just the sort of impact in a negative way that alcohol does have on our health, because it's not always visible on the outside. We know it's not good for us, but in what way exactly isn't it good for us? So let me explain briefly about that. And then I'm also going to give you a few ideas. Some of it will be obvious to you, other things maybe not what you might have thought about, that you can take away and implement between now and Christmas and going out in the future into next year. And let's be optimistic about that and going out. So, let's have a think about why we might want to say no, not necessarily no altogether. I'm not here to preach about abstinence from alcohol. I mean, I enjoy a glass of wine, love a glass of champagne, like the occasional gin and tonic, and I do like a cocktail when I'm away on holiday. This is about saying when we have intentions possibly to think, I'm not going to drink much, I don't want to, but then the plans fall apart. So let's first of all think about why we may want to not overindulge on alcohol. Now, I think most of us are aware that alcohol is high in calories and it's high in sugar. There's different ones have got a higher sugar content than others. Of course, this is going to convert into weight gain, but particularly, especially with the sugars, is this excess weight gain that gets laid down around our abdomen that can be really tricky to shift. So first and foremost, from a weight point of view, you don't want to be drinking much alcohol. You can very, very quickly find you're piling on the pounds around the middle when we start to overindulge. But something you may not be aware of is that alcohol creates a stress response when we drink it. So it triggers the adrenal glands to release adrenaline and cortisol. And cortisol in excess is pro-inflammatory to the body. But when it creates this stress response and triggers cortisol, this in turn also creates this release of sugar into the bloodstream and creates this yo-yo imbalance in blood sugar levels. But when we get the stress response with cortisol in very small amounts, that can be less inflammatory, but often we'll find with too much cortisol circulating in the bloodstream, not just because of alcohol, but from other stresses in our life, it becomes quite chronic, it becomes pro-inflammatory, and it does have sort of mood altering effects. We can end up finding we've got quite a low mood. It can increase our anxiety. It can affect our concentration. It can also affect our memory. So it has a lot of sort of negative impacts from a brain function point of view. And it does indeed play havoc with our blood sugar levels. This is why if you go out for a night and then you come back and you're like craving starchy carbohydrates, you want to have the toast or other things because you're just hungry. Or if you're out somewhere, you then start wanting to eat crisps or peanuts. There's a reason why those are sold in pubs, because you're just hungry, because you've just potentially not eaten enough before you go out. So it plays havoc with your blood sugar levels. And if your blood sugar level goes high and then it rapidly drops, it's when it drops and it can leave you feeling with low blood sugar level and that you need a sort of a pick-me-up. And so starchy carbs create quite a quick release of sugars. It does, of course, always have an impact. It can make us feel quite sort of shaky because of this dip in blood sugar level. And it certainly affects our sleep. Now, for some people, if they don't drink too much, and certainly for others, if they drink a lot, but not for many people, it can create and induce a sense of sleepiness and drowsiness. Some people, they just keel over and they're just sleeping. But really, for most people, what happens is where they have too much alcohol or just a little bit too much for you. It's not an absolute limit. It's too much for you, going over the edge a little bit, one too many, is that it really impairs good quality sleep. You may find you're waking in the night. It can lead to dehydration that certainly makes you wake in the night, but it can sort of really disturb having a good quality sleep, and you can wake up the next day feeling really quite lousy and just feeling rubbish the next day. Sleep is disturbed and it's quite light. Now, it can also have a very inflammatory effect on the gut intestinal barrier. You know, this important environment, when it's healthy, it creates a very beneficial home for our good bacteria that we need to support to thrive and grow. We need to nourish them. But this intestinal barrier can very easily be damaged, and alcohol is very inflammatory to this very delicate gut mucosal intestinal barrier. So it's really not good for the gut and for the growth of beneficial bacteria. And you know, it does put an additional burden on our liver. Now, you know, the liver is the place where we detoxify our compounds, our toxins in the body, and deal with the waste products. So, you know, it's what the liver is designed to do, but it also has to perform so many other functions. I've spoken before about the role of the liver with metabolizing hormones, and through the menopause, how important it is to take care of the liver. And I think this is why for some people, just having one alcoholic drink can make their menopausal symptoms so much worse the next day or for a few days afterwards. So when we're having alcoholic drinks, this puts this additional burden because the liver has to detoxify all these chemicals to get them out of the body. Other things can be poor sleep, it can poor skin. It can really affect the pallor of your skin. It can look quite grey and not great at all. You feel lousy, and it can affect your performance at work. So, you know, if you're trying to work, especially if you're running your own business and you want to be on your top peak performance, it's not going to enable you to be performing at your best. So what can we do about it? So I've just come up with, as I said, some top tips to try and avoid the overindulgence. As I said, this isn't about trying to say don't drink alcohol. That's something we could cover in my January recovery, 7-day quick Christmas recovery, and at other times. So tip number 1, don't go out hungry, because I believe if you're hungry, it could lead to an overindulgence in alcohol. So don't go out hungry. That's really not a good way to start. You know, there's the old-fashioned view about lining the stomach, and I think it's there for good reasons, to support the stomach and its first role in metabolizing some of this alcohol. But beyond that, I think having something to eat so you're not really hungry when you go out to drink is going to stop you overindulging in the alcohol and using the alcoholic calories as an excuse for eating proper food. But in terms of going out, you really want to make sure that what you do eat is a balanced snack. So I go on and talk a lot about keeping our blood sugar levels balanced. But where I've just talked about the impact that alcohol has on imbalancing our blood sugar levels, if we go out and we've eaten something that's just quite starchy, like say a bag of crisps, for example, if you go out and that's all you've had before you go out, it can really raise your blood sugar levels. The blood sugar levels come dipping down, you know, and that's not going to make it easy for you to keep resisting drinking more alcoholic drinks. So you want to have a balanced snack that definitely includes some protein. You could have a 2-egg small omelette. You could have some beans on a piece of whole grain toast. You could have a few oat cakes with some hummus, some nut butter, or some pate. So you're getting the protein, you may be getting some good fats, and you're getting a little bit of complex carbohydrates. That's a great way to set you up for a night out. Now, how about setting yourself a goal, and how can you stick to it? So you want to go out and have a really clear idea of your limits, what your plan is for the night ahead. You know, if you're sort of just in this sort of like, I don't really want to drink too much, I've got a busy day tomorrow, but you don't set yourself a clear goal, how are you going to stop? What's going to be the trigger that's going to tell you to say, I've had the limit that I've set myself and I'm not going to have any more. Because before you know it, you get wrapped up in the fun evening and socialising and your drinks being topped up, or, you know, somebody else is going to the bar and getting in another round. It's very difficult to go, no, I've now had my quota that I set myself the night and I really don't want to have any more. So setting yourself that goal, very, very simple, but have a very clear goal in your mind is one thing that you can do. And something else I really like the sound of, and it's not mine, I didn't come up with this, I found it and I thought, what a great idea. So I'm going to share it with you, that came from a psychiatrist. And that is to, if you've set yourself a goal of, say, having 2 drinks, putting 2 coins in one pocket, and every time you have that drink, you take 1 coin out of that pocket and you move it elsewhere. And so you've got to get the coin out of your pocket. It's almost like buying a drink. You've got to take the coin out of that pocket to get that drink. And then that coin gets moved out of the way. And then you go back into the pocket. Okay, I'm having my second drink. That's that coin gone. Move that out of the way. When you put your hand in your pocket again, there's no coins left. That's your actual reminder, your physical reminder, your mental reminder to say, I have no coins left. I've reached my quota that I set myself. It's a fantastic tool that you can use to then say, no, I set myself a target. Remind yourself why you set yourself your target, and you've taken an action. You can just say no at that point. It just makes you stop and rethink your actions before pursuing and progressing with the evening ahead. Of course, being the designated driver is an easy one to stop you drinking. So, you know, if you really don't want to be drinking at all, you know, just say it's my turn to drive. That's a great thing that you can do. It takes a conscious effort, though, to be in control. So I mentioned about setting a target and using something like those coins. It's quite a good little trick. I like the sound of that. As I said, it's very easy to go with the flow. I stay quite alert. I find, particularly if I'm around friends and the wine glass is being topped up, I'm really, really alert to that happening. Very, very conscious of my glass being topped up. So I stay really, really alert, and I make a very conscious effort to switch up my alcoholic drinks for soft drinks. For me, it's water. If I'm out, I might actually buy sparkling water. I do that. I don't really drink sparkling water at home, but I do when I go out, because it's like having a different type of drink. It makes it a little bit more interesting. Add some slices of lemon to it. You know, it's just a nice drink. No, it's not quite a gin and tonic, but you know, it looks the same. It's got a bit of sparkle to it, makes it more interesting. I make a very, very conscious effort to have some soft drinks throughout the course of the evening, so you don't just drink alcohol, and you haven't come back and had any water at all through the evening. If water is not your thing and you want to have something else, then do make sure that you're not going for the sugary drinks. You want to really, as much as possible, stay clear of the sugary ones. Although if I had a choice between switching up the alcohol and the sugary drinks, I think I'd go for a sugary drink at that point in the evening. But your sort of fruit juices, your J2Os, sugary squashes are not going to be the best thing. So sparkling water is probably my go-to. But the other thing you might want to think about now is the non-alcoholic drinks, the ones that are there to mimic alcohol. There are some fantastic brands on the market. There's been so much effort going into making these wines and things like these non-alcoholic gins really interesting, really tasty. So you go out and you feel that you're still having the real McCoy, the alcoholic drink, but actually you're not. You're not having any alcohol at all. So go and do some research around that. I think in the gin market, the Sipsmith, I think it's called, they do some really lovely botanicals that are non-alcoholic, but they are quite expensive. But, you know, as a way of reducing the alcohol consumption, it's a great thing. And at the end of the day, alcohol is so expensive when we're going out that you might as well invest on something that's non-alcoholic and may not be as cheap as a glass of water, but it's a way of enjoying in the evening, and people around you, they may not even be aware, because isn't there so much pressure to go out and drink alcohol, and it's just really not necessary at all. So in your day-to-day life, I mean, most of what I wanted to talk about was this sort of build up to Christmas and entertaining and socializing more. But in your day-to-day life, you really need to stop and think about having some alcohol-free nights. And maybe you do that, and that's brilliant. But you do need to think about that so that you've got nights when you're not on the alcohol. stop and think about when you reach for an alcoholic drink in the evening. Is it your just automatic stress response? You're feeling stressed, you've had a busy day, and you reach for the alcohol as a habit, as your stress reliever. And just try and stop and pause and think, what are my other stress relievers that I can do right now? For me, it would be some deep breathing. I would think about rolling out my yoga mat and doing 30 minutes of yoga. That, in fact, it's the yoga for me, I think, these days that really, really de-stresses me more than anything else. But the deep breathing is a great thing to do and implement straight away. For others, you'll have your own techniques that work well for you. And I've spoken about this on other videos that I've done, which you can find on my YouTube channel, Peyton Principles, Natural Health. But you might find just going for a walk, you might pick up the phone for a friend, you might have a bath, you might play some music. But just stop and pause and try and do one of these other things, because often when we're at home, the alcoholic drink is just the habit as the stress reliever. And a final reminder for you is just a reminder about the government guidelines. Here in the UK, the guidelines are 14 units of alcohol per week maximum for both men and women. There is no longer any difference between men and women. It's 14 units a week, which should be spread out and not had as a binge drink in one day, but equally you should be having alcohol-free nights. And that really should be your absolute upper limit, and ideally not doing that every single week as 14 units. Do we actually know how many units, though, are in the alcohol? There's a great website called drinkaware.co.uk, www.drinkaware.co.uk. Very, very useful to go on there. It gives you some guidance when you put in your male, female, your weight and your drinking habits and how much you think you consume. And that can tell you if you're sort of being healthy or not. Lots of really good advice on there. And it also enables you to see just how much alcohol there is, because I didn't realise that they're now saying that a typical bottle of wine is 10 units. So some people could easily, with a partner, share a bottle of wine in a night. That's 5 units each. That only takes 3 nights of having 3 bottles of wine with a partner, and you've actually exceeded your weekly allowance. And that's before having, I don't know, a gin and tonic or a half a lager or something like that. So that's a great website to go and have a look at. So I hope that's been some useful information for you tonight.